welcome back to Film on High. And today, the movie that we're going to review is Train to Busan. Directed by Sang-ho Hyun, this movie came out 2016 as an action horror, more suspenseful than anything else, where it stars Gung Hyo, Don Lee, and Suwon Kim. The story talks about a father who is basically estranged and divorced recently from his wife, has to take his daughter to Busan to celebrate her birthday and also to drop her off to her mother. However, whilst they're on the train, a whole viral outbreak goes on and they are stuck on the train with a bunch of zombies and they must survive all the way to Busan to escape. So, what do you think about this movie?
Well, this is a pretty solid zombie horror movie. In some ways, it was refreshing. It had like some kind of fresh takes on familiar material. In some ways, it was kind of, it did have some similarities to other like zombie movies and things I've seen in the past. Because, when you're doing the kind of zombie movie thing, there's only so many variations you can do. I feel like it's become a bit of a played out genre at this point.
Yeah.
And especially like for this movie to come out in 2016 when the zombie craze was already kind of over, at least in North America, I'm surprised that this movie had like such a big impact on people. But it does have like obviously I think the thing that for a lot of people draws them in is this movie has a bit more of an emotional core than a lot of horror movie does. It does go out of its way to build up the characters and their relationships.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like all these little sort of emotional arcs that are built up and paid off throughout the film, and it does give you a sense of, I guess, connecting and relating to the characters better as opposed to just seeing them as disposable cannon fodder for zombies.
Yeah, I did like the actors that played their roles, like the father, where he played kind of cold. He was a manager at this company, and essentially he really much didn't really think about his daughter or really took interest in what she liked. Even at the beginning, slight spoilers, that he gets a present for her, but he doesn't realize that he's gotten the exact same present the last time, just showing really how much out of touch he is. So they sprinkle out these scenes, but they don't try to drag on too much out of it.
Well, yeah, like again, it's kind of like they were trying to blend together like because we've seen a lot of these familial dramas too, like the distant father who has to, like, in a way it's almost reminiscent of the movie Kramer versus Kramer with zombies. That's how I would have pitched it to the North American distributors, but anyway. But like also there are shows like The Walking Dead and video games like The Last of Us, which has also become a TV show, that also had that kind of, you have the zombie apocalypse, but there's also characters and relationships. So this movie, I think that's also part of the reason it was so successful. It kind of slid in neatly amongst that rank of, because we were, in a way, like, I don't know if, this is quite the way to say it, but zombie fiction is sort of grown up, in a sense, you could sort of say. Like, people are expecting more from it than just run-of-the-mill gore.
Well, you look at all, like, the very first one for us, the Night of the Living Dead, right?
Yeah.
The black and white one.
Well, yeah, that was kind of the birth of zombie cinema, the George A. Romero. And, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just watching that movie, seeing how characters would react, even back then, it still stands the test of time. And watching this movie in comparison, you could compare it to Dawn of the Dead, you can compare it to Return of the Living Dead or something like that.
Well, Return of the Living Dead is more of a comedy, but yeah.
But
it has kind of echoes of Day of the Dead as well, because that's the thing. It's almost like George A. Romero, his films, they weren't so strong on the emotional side. There was like some emotion and some attachment in his films and stuff like that, but he was more focusing on more the kind of socio-political message. Like, the zombie movies were ways for him to comment on issues like, class issues in America, consumerism, the Vietnam War, even like racism at the end of Night of the Living Dead. There's a pretty potent scene that happens. So, you have all of these kind of themes, and in a way, Train to Busan does pick up on that, because there is also some subtle social stuff going on. Well, sometimes it's not so subtle, sometimes it's pretty obvious, but like you have the presence of the homeless guy who is the first guy to warn them of the zombie outbreak, and of course nobody really takes him seriously because they think he's just some raving bum.
Yeah.
And there's even the one guy, the asshole businessman, who sort of becomes the main antagonist of the film. He speaks, he talks down about the guy kind of thing. So the class distinctions are made clear from the beginning. And then as the situation gets more dire and the zombies are kind of invading the train, it almost becomes like an issue of like, this is our car kind of thing. Like, you can't be here. There's some clever stuff in there. And, obviously maybe a lot of it relates to South Korean society, like, but it is universal enough that I think any audience can kind of pick up on it and appreciate it. And that's probably why the movie was such a success.
Yeah, that's where it succeeded, as well as so the action in this movie, even though it says action horror, there's not a lot.
I wouldn't call it like action. There is like action sequences, but obviously like it's more of there's not much like gunfire in the film or anything like that. I want to
say dramatic action. Yeah.
Because as a practical notion, like, in South Korea, I don't think as many people own firearms as they might in North America, so the characters are sort of reduced to fighting with improvised melee weapons, bats, or even their fists. And that does kind of give the action a more tactile, kind of stressful edge. And the fact that they're packed in such enclosed quarters with these zombies who are really quite mobile and quite dangerous as well. They move fast.
Yeah.
They're not like the shambling Romero zombies.
That's what makes the movie great, because you're stuck on a train and these zombies can run at you. They don't just walk. So
yeah, and the
concept
concept
is just claustrophobic and tense.
It works too, like the concept of relocating the action to a train. Like, I don't know if any zombie movie has really done that before, so it is, and it kind of does recall Dawn of the Dead in a way, because in Dawn of the Dead you had these people trapped in a mall. Obviously that's kind of like a stationary area, but in this film we have the same kind of idea of a bunch of people trapped in this one kind of contained space. Only in this film, it's even more tense because there's a lot more people in a much smaller space.
Yeah.
So we get to see kind of realistically how tempers flare and how people maybe behave in ways that are not quite so rational.
Yeah, and the way it devolves, it's all thanks to the bad guy of this film.
Yeah, who was maybe a bit much.
Name, but he was basically a COO, so he's a business owner. Let's just call him that.
Yeah.
So the business owner, really much from the beginning, you get to see him interacting with the daughter of the father, and
yeah, you get the idea that he's kind of an asshole,
he's
like
just
a class
straight up dick, just the biggest dick on earth.
Well, yeah, but at first you get the idea that he's kind of a jerk, but then over the course of the movie you realize this guy is really like awful. Like, he's just a spineless coward with no morals. He doesn't give a shit about a single person besides himself. And it almost becomes like excessive. I felt like towards the end he's just like fucking like just throwing people to be killed by the zombies. I'm like, wow.
I must live.
Yeah, like
die.
And again, I guess, making a comment on like, again, the social kind of aspect of the film, or even just like, what people will do in the heat of the moment, for their own survival. And, like, I even commented at one point, like, the real virus infecting the train is the selfishness, even more so than the zombie virus. These people can't really work together.
I mean, I guess that's what the theme would be.
Yeah.
More, just the core sense of it all.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of a familiar thing that goes back to the Romero zombie movies as well. Like, a lot of the threat is internal, just from people being like jerks or unable to work together or come to a consensus, and that's where everything falls apart.
Yeah. But that's where the movie shines, I think, because first off, there is a story arc, right?
Yeah.
So you look at the main character, he used to be an asshole, kind of like the business owner in a sense, but
yeah,
he had a whole switch throughout the
well
movie.
Yeah, and we do get like a pretty big revelation later in the film that was pretty, like, that was maybe my favorite moment in the film, where we get a revelation that like he may be personally responsible for this zombie outbreak because of something he did in his business. And I thought, like, wow, that's huge. Because, like, the idea of, like, a guy trying to survive with his daughter, like, that's kind of a theme we've seen before. You see that in movies like The Mist, where the guy's trying to protect his son and stuff like that. But, the idea that this guy might be personally responsible for all of this bloodshed, although then they ruined it with an obvious, like, we see him washing the blood off his hands in the sink, and it's like, okay, obvious fucking metaphor there. But it was still a pretty powerful scene. Like, I wasn't expecting that. Like, that was a genuinely unexpected moment.
I like that scene. It just comes out of nowhere, and you're just there kind of like, ha.
Well, yeah, and it puts you in his shoes of, like, yeah, wow. Because, this character, like, like you said, he's kind of a jerk at the beginning. He's an absent father. He's distant, kind of selfish. Mm-hmm. But we do grow to, like, sympathize with him. He becomes kind of our, the audience avatar, in a way, the surrogate, the character that we relate to the most. And we relate to his struggle of trying to keep his daughter alive, because their relationship is obviously the central relationship of the film. And it works. Like, all of the characters are pretty good. Like, they did a good job with the variety of building things up and the tension and how it plays out. Like, again, some of the elements of the film are maybe a little bit predictable, like I said before, but they use those predictable elements in a way that still makes for a very fresh and engaging film.
Yeah.
And it's well-rounded, They have the emotional stuff, the character stuff, but it's also got a lot of great zombie gore and carnage that will satisfy the gore hounds out there. So, like, it's a film that hits pretty well on all bases, Like, it's emotionally involving, it's exciting, it's, it's got the gore and the violence that the horror fans want. It's got some good, juicy drama.
The thing that I really liked about this movie, I think, is actually its side characters. Although there's not a lot of side characters.
Well, there's a few. There's like the two old sisters, the two old women. There's the couple there. Yeah, the couple who are having a child. The guy who was in The Gangster, the Cop, and the Devil there. Yeah. He was good in the movie.
No, I really liked him, and then the baseball dude with his
the baseball team. Yeah, the kid from the team who sees his whole team turn into zombies in front of him, basically. Like, little moments like that where it's like, oh yeah, like the psychological like impact that this would have on you as a person. And sometimes they stretch it out a bit too much. Like, there are some moments that I felt like they stretched out longer than they should have, and I wasn't really a big fan of the score of the film either. Like, the score was sometimes odd. Like, during the scene where they're fighting all the zombies in the train, there's some really weird and ill-fitting music playing in the background. I would have preferred something more dramatic. And during the emotional scenes, they bring out the pianos and the violins. It's a bit too on the nose, but...
this is... Yeah. What else are we gonna do?
I know, but I feel like it felt like it almost felt like a TV sitcom soundtrack, like, oh, here's the sad moment, get the strings in so the audience knows to be emotional. But that's a minor thing, a lot of movies do that, but it stuck out to me, but that's kind of a minor complaint, I think.
Overall, I enjoyed this movie. I've watched it quite a few times, and every time I watch it, I get to learn something new about the movie, just seeing that this is the director's third film, as you said before. So,
although he did animated films before this, I think this is his first live-action film, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. He did a good job. But you can also see, like, there is, like, almost, like, you can tell it's a guy who's worked in animation, just like the scenes of the zombies chasing after them and the way they, like, fall through the doors. Like, you can almost tell that, like, I think this is a movie that was very intensely storyboarded, like, they worked out every single shot.
I think it worked in its favor, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it works. It works really well. And, there are some moments where, because, like, the whole how the zombies work in this movie, like, sometimes it's a bit inconsistent. Like, they do establish some firm rules. Like, if the zombies don't see you, they won't attack you. They seem to operate mostly on sight. But then towards the end, it all starts to get a bit hectic as the zombies are just chasing after them, and we see them, like, going through doors with ease, which was a big deal earlier on in the movie. But again, that's, I guess you can excuse those just for, like, the tension. They're going for the all-out kind of
finish.
Yeah, the finale, so you can't really, now we can throw those little rules away, and who knows, maybe the zombies are getting smarter too. They're learning.
This overall, this is the type of movie you should be looking out for if you're into zombies and you want to see something that's quite modern, you could say. So,
Yeah, it's one of like the better zombie movies I've seen in a
Yeah.
while. Like personally, there are still some others I prefer. Like I still prefer I prefer Dawn of the Dead, the George A. Romero's. I prefer 28 Days Later, although some people argue whether that's a zombie movie or not. But this was a good film. Like I did enjoy it. I thought it hit all the bases. It was good, satisfying.
Yeah.
I can see why it was such a hit with a lot of people.
yeah, overall, my rating would be a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5 myself.
Yeah.
Good, solid zombie film. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, so this has been Film on High.
Peace.
Later.